morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here in this session telling the truth today in love, and especially this specialized section on being a public witness in a hostile culture. Let me give you a little background. Who am I? I'm a venture capitalist who lives in Silicon Valley, California. I've been in the venture capital business for 30 years, manage a very large fund, about $8 to $9 billion assets under management, and we invest in technology companies, we invest in healthcare companies, we invest in consumer companies in the US, in Israel, also in India, and a little bit in China. But about 80% of our investments are made in the US. Let me give you a little bit more background about my life. I was born in India and raised in India, went to school there, went to university there, College of Engineering, and grew up in a nominal Christian family. My parents would go to church. I would go to church with them once in a while, but it really didn't mean anything to me other than it was just a ritual. It was just a routine. Some of my friends who were Hindus went to temples. Some of my friends who were Muslims went to mosques. Some of my friends who were Sikhs went to gurdwaras. And so therefore I went to a church. And that was all the significance that was there to my going to church. And then something happened in my life. I was about 18 years old, and I saw some things that scared the living daylights out of me. Call it fear. Fear gripped me. We all face fears in our lives. This time around, fear gripped me, and I sat there thinking, gee, if something like this was to happen to me, what would I do? It was very fearful. And I had heard a couple of things at church about casting our cares on Jesus, and I began to think about that. And then a friend of mine invited me to a youth meeting at one of the local churches there, and I heard a preacher from Youth for Christ talk about what it means to follow Jesus, what it means to have a relationship with Jesus. And so for the first time in my life, having gone to church many times before and not knowing what it all meant, I accepted Jesus into my life at the age of 18. And that's just absolutely changed my life. Now, what does that have to do with witnessing my faith? And what are some of the commonalities that I went through back then? And as we live in a culture today, how do we deal with that? So as you know, I live in Silicon Valley, and it's a very unique place. It is the capital of the tech world. All kinds of companies get started here. All kinds of companies exist here. You think about the Googles and the Facebooks and the Netflix and the Twitters and the Salesforce and a whole host of other companies. They all were created here. The entrepreneurs were here. They started the companies. And we have entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley from all over the world. We have entrepreneurs from Asia, different parts of Asia. We have entrepreneurs from Europe. We have entrepreneurs from Israel. We have entrepreneurs from Palestine. We have entrepreneurs, obviously, from California itself, from the US. And so it's a very unique and diverse place. And one of the things that's interesting about it is a lot of people here in Silicon Valley, and I'm talking about the tech environment, very visionary, very innovative, thinking about the future, thinking about what to do. And one of the things that I found very interesting as we fund startups, these are companies that are just getting started. These are companies that are trying to build a product or a service. And usually they get about 1 to 2 years of funding, cash. So, here are companies that are hiring people. These people are visionary, they're innovative, they're leaving steady jobs, and they're joining a company where they hope everything will work out well. They're, of course, fearful about the future. What will happen 2 years from now when this company runs out of cash based on the spending rate that they have right now, will we have created our product? Will we have enough traction in the marketplace? Will we have sold enough product so that we can raise more funds or get to cash flow break even? What happens next? Those are the kinds of fears that people have. All of us have. We all have fears in our lives. I still remember when I left India in 1972 to come to the US for my master's in engineering in Chicago at Northwestern University in Evanston. I did not get a scholarship, but I got a loan from my dad for $4,500. This is back in 1972. And that's all I had. I had $4,500. I came to the US. I knew deep down that I would have to figure out what to do a year later when hopefully I would be graduating, assuming I did well at school, and then I would have to figure out what comes next. That was a fear in my life at that time, but God enabled me to overcome that fear and come anyway. And so there's a lot of commonality to some extent between what I have faced over the years and what entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley and even other parts of the country or the world that are involved with startups that are innovative and visionary and they're thinking about creating something new. Those are the kinds of things that we all face. There is fear of the future, there's fear of the unknown, and there's things that grip their hearts, and yet they're innovative, they're visionary, and they want to take the risk and go ahead and do that. And I remember doing that as well. After I graduated from Northwestern University with a PhD, God provided for me through that PhD program where I got a scholarship from the university through the National Institute of Health. God took care of those fears. But when I graduated, I began to look for some jobs. I found a job, worked for about 5 years in Chicago, met my wife there, got married, and then somehow had that desire to be an innovator. And so I ended up joining a startup in Southern California, did that for 3 years, sold the company, ended up joining another startup in Minnesota, CEO of the startup now, struggled with the company for a while, the normal stuff that all entrepreneurs go to. What is going to happen next? And those are the kinds of things that we all worry about. And those are the kinds of things I want to share with entrepreneurs, especially my faith. And some of you might ask me, how do you share your faith in a culture that won't necessarily listen, or you don't have the ability to be able to freely talk to them? And so what I do is post a lot of stuff on my profile on LinkedIn, on my FaceTube link, even on YouTube, and even this talk. Hopefully I'll get a chance to take this video and put it on Facebook or Vimeo and even on LinkedIn, where I'm connected to thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs all over the world. And so do I identify with entrepreneurs? Yes, I do. And do I try to communicate the good news to them? I do. And so there is that opportunity for me to establish commonality with this special kinds of entrepreneurs all over the world, not just in the US. I'm talking about entrepreneurs in India, entrepreneurs even in China, where I've done a few deals, and even entrepreneurs in Israel, and obviously here in the US. And so one of the things that I found very interesting over the years, and as I've thought about it, is is there any commonality when, as a venture capitalist, I look at a whole bunch of companies and decide which ones to invest in? Where am I going to take the risk and say, yes, I want to back this company? What is the process that one goes through? And what is the level of confidence that I might have in something? And what are the investigations that I do, or some of my associates with me, in terms of figuring out, is this a good idea to invest in? And I believe that to some extent, trusting in Jesus, believing in what God has written in the Bible, requires a certain element of due diligence, certain element of investigating and saying, does this make sense? Is this relevant to me? And so one of the things we look at when we look at a company or when entrepreneurs come to us with an idea, we try to understand what is the value proposition? What are they talking about? What is the solution here? What is the problem that they're trying to fix? What is the value proposition? And is this value proposition unique? One of the things we worry about in the venture industry is sometimes people come up with an idea and then hundreds of other entrepreneurs try to copy the same idea. And so then the question you ask is this value proposition unique, or is this another Me Too kind of a product or company? And those are the kinds of things we look at. Is this relevant to me? Would anyone care out there? Will people buy this product when this product gets done? What is the total addressable market for a product like this? And then the various diligence that you have to do on the entrepreneurs themselves, and then also talk to customers and try and understand, okay, does this make sense? And so I firmly believe that trusting in Jesus requires a certain element of diligence, especially in a culture that is agnostic, a culture that's very skeptical, a culture that does not believe in God, has been taught that in secular schools and so on and so forth. And how do we help people, entrepreneurs and others, to understand that, listen, there is a very unique value proposition that Jesus talked about, and that there's no one else that has ever come up with that concept and with that idea and with that claim. And then, yes, we can do our diligence. And so, as I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a certain element of fear that starts to grip people at different stages of their lives. People that are getting older. I'm going to die one day. Entrepreneurs whose parents are getting older. And they look at it and say, oh my goodness, my parents are going to die one of these days. So there is a common fear that all of us have at different stages of our life, and that is the fear of death. There's all kinds of challenges going on right now, as you know, with the COVID virus, thousands of people being killed because of the virus, disease. And then as you think of all the things happening all over the world, where people are being murdered, people are being brutalized, everyone dies. The stats are 1 on 1. There is no one that lives forever on this earth. That's a common problem, and all of us have that fear. And yet, one of the boldest and unique claims that Jesus ever taught, that the world had ever heard, was he said, hey, listen, if you believe in me, and if you believe that I'm paying the penalty for your sins, and we'll get to that in a second, what does that mean? You will be with me in eternity. Jesus talked about eternity. He talked about the fact that our life here on earth is short, but eternity goes on forever and ever. And those that accept him will be with him in eternity, and those that don't accept him will be lost forever and ever, separated from God. Call it hell or whatever you want to call it. And so I began to investigate that. What does this mean? Now, in our modern culture, in the US and all over the world, a very basic concept that exists out there is, well, if there's a God, well, I just want to make sure that I do enough good things in my life that can counteract some of the bad things I've done. I'll keep doing some of those bad things, but then, I'll recompense them by doing some good things. And at the end of the day, all will be okay. All will be okay. My Muslim friends believe that. My Hindu friends believe that. My Jewish friends believe that too. And a whole bunch of agnostic Americans believe that as well. Oh, I don't know what's going to happen after death, but gee, I'll just go ahead and do some good things, and that's going to negate all the bad things that I've done, and I'll be okay. And I use a very simple illustration to convey to people that, gee, you're going to have to grapple with this. I don't believe that. And I use a very simple analogy. So let's take that. I am Sunday morning, or it could be a Saturday morning, or it could be any time, it doesn't matter. I've just gone to church, and I've had a good time, and I donated some money for the poor and whatever else the church wants to use that money for. And then I'm on the road driving, and I'm in an area where it says 25 miles per hour speed limit, and I'm going 50 miles an hour. And a cop catches me and pulls me over. And he says, "Sir, you were going 50 miles an hour in a zone that says 25. There's school kids here. You got to be careful. I'm going to have to fine you." And I start looking at him and saying, "What are you talking about? I just went to church. I donated so much money. Do you know how much money I give to different causes? I help the poor, I help this, I help that." And he looks at me and he says, "Sir, all that is very good, sir, but you broke this speed limit here, and I have to give you a penalty for it." And I get so angry at him. He's standing on the road. I just drive off. I don't care what this guy says. He has no idea how good I am. And so guess what happens? A few days later, I get a letter from the city saying that I broke the law and that I have to show up in court. And guess what? I ignore it. I say to myself, forget it. These guys are nuts. They have no idea all the good things that I've done and continue to do. And so guess what? I don't show up for that court appointment. And so guess what happens? The allegations against me by this cop get elevated. And so now I get an order from the Superior Court of the County of Santa Clara. I'm just using that as an example. It's an illustration. You have to appear for court. And guess what? I don't show up again. I won't. These guys have no idea how many good things I do. And so guess what? A cop shows up at my door, and he says, "Sir, you are in extreme violation. I got to take you to court right now." And so he literally forces me to get in a car, his car, and drop me off at the court. And there are people waiting there for me, and they pull me in, and I now stand before a judge, the judge of the Superior Court of the County of Santa Clara. And he looks at me and he says, "Sir, you know that you've been violating so many different rules in the city here. You were going 50 miles an hour in a 25-mile zone, is that correct?" And I look at him again and say, "Sir, yes, I did. But do you know, sir, who I am? Do you know how much money I give to help the poor, to help this and help that?" And he looks at me and he says, "Sir, all that is very good. But, sir, you broke the law. You were going 50 in a 25-mile zone, and you have to be punished for that, and also then refusing to show up. There's a big fine for that. Doesn't matter how much good you do, sir, keep doing that good. but I have to punish you for this. And he gives me a penalty. You got to pay a $50,000 fine. And I look at him and say, what are you talking about? And I say to myself, I can't pay that because I don't have that money. I have mortgages due and so on and so forth. And I'm just totally scared. And he's looking at me saying, when are you going to give us that 50,000? And I don't know what to do. And then a friend of mine who's listening shows up. And he says to me, Pramod, I know you're in trouble here. I'll take care of that 50,000 for you. And he goes to the judge and he says, sir, I'll pay that 50,000 on behalf of Pramod. And the judge looks at me and he says, are you okay with that? And I said, yes. And my friend pays the 50,000. I shake his hand and I am free. And that is what Jesus kept talking about. He said, listen, all of us have committed tasks and things in our lives that are sinful. God, who's supreme, is going to punish us. There's a penalty for any sin that we've committed. But if we trust in Jesus, that he paid the penalty for our sins when he died on the cross, that we are set free. And as you know, even today, a lot of my Muslim friends at a certain time of the year will celebrate certain Eids when lambs are slaughtered in Makkah. And the Jews people, as you know, used to do that in the temple when animals would get sacrificed for our sins. And guess what? That temple sacrifice stopped when Jesus died on the cross for our sins. And that is the great value proposition that Jesus has given us. If you believe in me, even though you die physically, but spiritually you will be with me in heaven for all eternity. And that was the greatest value proposition that I have ever heard, and I accepted that, and I continue to thrive and be excited about it. And I've done some due diligence, and our time is short here, but I'll tell you, I began to look at it and say, okay, let me understand, is Bible the only thing that talks about Jesus Christ? Or are there other documents? And I found out that Flavius Josephus in AD 93, a Jewish historian, wrote about Jesus. And then I found out that Tacitus, a Roman historian in 116 AD, also wrote about Jesus. Those are manuscripts that are available today. And a whole bunch of other people have written. And the biggest thing was that 10 out of his 12 disciples traveled all over the ancient world and were martyred. And not one of them ever stopped from preaching the good news. It wasn't a lie, it wasn't a story, it wasn't a fable or a myth that was made up, because no one would die for a myth or a fable or a made-up story. And that was what really excites me as I look at the value proposition of Jesus, at the offer that he made, how he addresses the fear about what happens when I die, and I look at all the diligence and the references on him and material that has been written over and over again in different parts of the world at different times. And that is how I communicate and feel free and excited to communicate the message about the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you believe in me, you will not perish, but have everlasting life. Thank you. Thank you very much.